Origins of civilization, 7000 to 4500 BC. The cradle of civilization sprouted in Mesopotamia, that lush land nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This area, literally meaning the land between rivers, had the perfect conditions for humanity's first great civilization to take root. Mesopotamia was a bit of a paradox. The harsh desert acted as a tough barrier, while the rivers brought life-giving water. Sure, summer temperatures could be brutal, but the annual floods deposited nutrient-rich silt across the floodplains, making it all worthwhile. These natural contrasts really shaped the creativity and resilience of the people who called this place home. The earliest permanent settlements of the Ubaid culture popped up during the 7th millennium BC at spots like Tel Ubaid. Archaeological digs show us the first mud brick structures, laying the groundwork for what would become the world's first urban centers. These early settlers lived in a time before metal tools, writing, or kings, yet they were the ones who set the stage for all these innovations. The game changer for this ancient land was the mastery of irrigation. By building canals, the early Mesopotamians managed to redirect the unpredictable river waters, turning destructive floods into a resource they could control. This newfound ability to manage water transformed previously barren land into fertile fields, creating agricultural surpluses that were previously unimaginable in such a dry area. This mix of geography and innovation sparked an incredible experiment in human organization. As the Neolithic era unfolded, a remarkable civilization emerged from these humble beginnings, establishing the foundations of urban life, developing the world's first writing system, and creating tech innovations that still impact our world today. The Ubaid period, named after the archaeological site of Tel al-Ubaid, marked humanity's first steps toward a complex society in southern Mesopotamia. These early settlers crafted unique pottery with geometric designs, painted in black on a greenish background archaeological markers that help researchers trace their cultural spread. Starting simple, these ceramic vessels evolved into intricate forms with delicate patterns, showcasing the dedication of skilled craftspeople who spent their lives perfecting their art. Village architecture during this time shows how social structures were becoming more complex. The earliest settlements were made up of small round huts crafted from bundled reeds, which were easy to find in the marshy delta. By around 6000 BC, rectangular buildings made from hand-molded mud bricks started popping up, often arranged around central courtyards. This shift in architecture reflected a change in social organization, moving from simple family units to larger households that shared workspaces. When we look at plant remains from these early sites, it's clear that these folks had some serious agricultural know-how. They grew 6-row barley, emmer wheat, and flax, rotating their crops to keep the soil healthy. Date palms weren't just for fruit. They provided shade and building materials too. Their veggie gardens produced onions, garlic, and beans to add variety to their grain-heavy diet. Plus, they supplemented their meals with fishing, hunting waterfowl, and raising domesticated animals, creating a diverse food system that could bounce back from crop failures. This period also saw the beginnings of social hierarchy. Archaeological finds show a range of burial goods. Some graves held only simple pottery, while others contained fancy materials like obsidian and lapis lazuli, likely traded from afar. These differences hint at variations in status, wealth, or social roles. The complexity of irrigation systems indicates that people were working together under some form of leadership. As managing these systems required planning and maintenance, that individual households just couldn't handle alone. Religious practices centered around communal shrines, which became more elaborate over time. At Tel Abada, archaeologists found a tripartite temple with a central hall and smaller rooms, a design that would influence Mesopotamian sacred architecture for ages. Ritual objects, including female figurines, point to a focus on fertility and regeneration. The growing size and complexity of these religious structures show how communities invested their resources into spiritual life. Eridu stands out as the most significant settlement from this era. Located near an ancient lake in what's now southern Iraq, it houses the oldest known temple in Mesopotamia. Excavations revealed 17 shrine buildings stacked on top of each other, marking over 2,000 years of continuous religious activity. The earliest structure was a simple mud brick platform, but each rebuild added more size and detail, culminating in a grand temple complex dedicated to Enki, the god of fresh water and wisdom. This sacred site set the stage for the impressive religious complexes that would later define Mesopotamian cities. The shift from temporary camps to permanent villages really changed how humans lived. Instead of moving around in small groups like nomadic hunter-gatherers, these early agricultural folks settled down in fixed communities. Families started to think about property differently, investing time and effort into building homes and cultivating fields that would be passed down through generations. They sensed their rituals with farming cycles, creating shared rhythms that brought everyone together. Those seeds they carefully selected and saved each harvest weren't just about next year's crops. They symbolized the knowledge and traditions shared across generations. At the core of Sumerian civilization was a game-changing idea: controlling water. Long before the impressive ziggurats towered over the landscape, these early farmers built irrigation canals. Using simple stone and wooden tools, they connected the winding rivers to their fields, creating artificial waterways. This innovation turned unpredictable floods into a reliable resource, letting settlements grow beyond the riverbanks. It's pretty mind-blowing to think about the engineering feats these ancient folks accomplished with basic technology. They managed to maintain the right gradients for water flow over long distances, using just human labor and simple tools. They built levees to protect their crops from floods and created sluice gates to manage water flow. They even set up sediment traps to keep the irrigation channels clear of silt. All this required constant upkeep, dredging channels, fixing embankments, and clearing debris, showing how teamwork and leadership were crucial. Eridu, the sacred city, stands as a testament to this transformative time. Founded in the 6th millennium BC, it grew around a temple dedicated to Enki, the water god, recognizing the life-giving force that was essential for their survival. Archaeological finds reveal that it started as a small shrine, but gradually expanded into a complex with multiple buildings and courtyards. Eridu wasn't just a settlement. It was the first true temple town, where religious life was deeply intertwined with civic duties. This era marked a major shift for humanity, moving from nomadic lifestyles to settled agricultural life. For generations, people followed seasonal game and gathered wild plants. Now, they committed to specific locations, growing domesticated grains like barley and emmer wheat in irrigated fields, while raising sheep and goats for meat, milk, and wool. This change reshaped humanity's connection with the natural world. The archaeological record shows just how much this new lifestyle changed social dynamics. When we look at excavated homes, we see dedicated spaces for food storage, which hints at people planning for the future. During this time, Clay tokens of different shapes popped up, likely marking the earliest way to keep track of agricultural production. Plus, the emergence of communal burial grounds suggests that folks were forming stronger bonds to their community. They lived and died in the same sacred spaces. In this exciting period, we laid the groundwork for social complexity like never before. Villages kept getting bigger as agricultural surpluses fueled population growth. With more food, people began specializing in crafts, allowing them to focus on activities beyond just food production. These changes were key in pushing Mesopotamia toward urban life, marking the next big step in the Sumerian journey. The Uruk period, c. 4000 to 3100 BC. As the 5th millennium BC wrapped up, the agricultural foundations set in Eridu and other early settlements really started to pay off. The scattered villages of Sumer came together to form something totally new in human history: real cities. At the center of this urban revolution was a settlement that would become the world's first metropolis. The city of Uruk grew at an incredible pace. By 3200 BC, it was surrounded by massive walls that enclosed nearly 6 kilometers of bustling space, home to about 50,000 people, a mind-blowing concentration of humanity for the time. This wasn't just a big village. It was a completely new way of organizing human life. The city walls, made of sun-dried mud brick, served not only as protection from outside threats, but also as a clear divide between the ordered world inside and the wild chaos outside. The layout of the city showed off some serious planning. At its heart was the Ina precinct, dedicated to the goddess Inanna, featuring a complex of temples set around courtyards and connected by processional paths. The White Temple, sitting on an artificial platform, a precursor to later ziggurats, offered stunning views across the entire settlement. Residential areas spread out from these sacred spots, with narrow, winding streets, creating neighborhoods that were alive with activity from dawn till dusk. Archaeological digs in the Ina district have uncovered an impressive array of religious buildings like nothing seen before. The Stone Cone Temple, named for the decorative stone cones embedded in its walls, had a unique layout with a central hall and smaller rooms flanking it. Nearby, the limestone temple stood out, built from imported stone blocks, a real luxury in stone-poor Mesopotamia, showing just how much effort went into sacred architecture. The pillar hall featured massive columns that held up a high ceiling, creating a space that inspired awe. These buildings were adorned with decorative elements like clay cone mosaics and shiny copper panels that would have sparkled in the bright Mesopotamian sun. On the other side of the city, the Anu Ziggurat complex was another center of sacred power. Dedicated to the sky god Anu, this artificial mountain rose in tiers, topped by the White Temple. The stark white walls of this shrine stood out against the blue sky, visible from miles around. Inside, a single room housed an altar and an offering table, where priests performed rituals that connected the earthly and divine realms. The grand staircase leading up the ziggurat served as both a physical and symbolic bridge between humans and the gods, a true stairway to heaven. City life changed how people interacted in deep ways. No longer could everyone know everyone else. Strangers lived side by side, which meant new social rules and hierarchies had to form. The archaeological record shows a growing variety in house sizes, hinting at a rising social divide. Some homes were simple, single-room structures, while others expanded into multi-room compounds with private courtyards, marking the rise of an elite class. Residential neighborhoods really show the complexity of this urban society. Archaeological digs have uncovered tightly packed houses along narrow, winding streets where trash piled up between rare cleanings. Extended families lived in multi-room homes built around central courtyards, which provided light, fresh air, and space for everyday activities. Beneath many floors, you'd find the burials of family members, keeping a connection alive between the living and the dead. Upper-story bedrooms offered a break from the heat below, while rooftops became extra living spaces during the cooler evenings. The layers of history reveal centuries of rebuilding along the same street patterns, hinting at established neighborhoods with strong social ties. What's most interesting is that these urban centers thrived on interdependence and specialization, something that just wasn't possible in village life. Farmers brought fresh produce to bustling markets. Craftspeople crafted unique goods. Priests connected people with the divine, and workers built and maintained public spaces. This division of labor marked a big shift from the self-sufficient village lifestyle that had been the norm for ages. The urban revolution sparked a wave of innovations that changed human potential forever. One of the biggest breakthroughs was the invention of writing, the first way to record information beyond what we could remember. This wasn't born from lofty philosophical ideas, but from the practical needs of administration. The earliest clay tablets, dating back to around 3400 BC, featured simple pictographs representing things like grain, sheep, or beer. Temple officials created these proto-cuneiform records to keep track of goods coming in and out of their storehouses. Each pictograph looked like the object it represented, a star-like symbol for sheep or a vessel shape for beer. These early records brought a level of accounting precision to the complex urban economy that had never been seen before. Writing evolved quickly. Within just a few centuries, the pictographic system turned into true writing that could express abstract ideas. Scribes rotated the signs 90 degrees and used a reed stylus to make wedge-shaped marks in clay, hence the name cuneiform, which comes from the Latin word for wedge. The number of distinct signs shrank from about 2,000 pictographs to around 600 cuneiform characters, making it easier to learn while broadening its expressive power. By 3000 BC, scribes had figured out how to represent the sounds of spoken language, allowing them to write down names, verbs, and grammar, the final step toward a complete writing system. Over time, these practical symbols transformed into a sophisticated writing system capable of expressing complex ideas and recording spoken language. Writing changed how humans thought, enabling advanced administrative systems, precise math, and eventually literature itself. With writing, knowledge could grow and be passed down through generations, no longer limited by the quirks of human memory. The invention of the wheel during the late 4th millennium BC was a game-changer. Mesopotamian potters took their turning platforms and transformed them into real potter's wheels, which let them whip up vessels faster and with way more precision than ever before. Not long after, wheeled vehicles hit the scene, completely changing the transportation game. Clay models from this time show four-wheeled carts being pulled by oxen or onagers, making it so much easier to move goods across the land. The earliest wheels were pretty basic, made from solid wooden discs cut from tree trunks and attached axles with leather bindings and wooden pegs. But as time went on, these designs got lighter and more advanced, with separate wooden segments coming together to create a sturdier wheel. And then around 2000 BC, spoked wheels came into play, which took transportation to a whole new level. These spoked wheels led to the creation of light, speedy chariots that changed the way people waged war and communicated. This era also saw some impressive strides in metallurgy. While earlier cultures occasionally worked with native copper, Sumerian metalworkers figured out how to smelt metal from ore through controlled heating. This breakthrough made copper way more available, leading to a boom in metal tools, weapons, and ornaments. Excavations of graves from this time show just how skilled artisans became, crafting complex alloys like arsenical copper that made their products tougher and longer lasting. The metallurgical revolution kicked off with simple heating of copper-bearing rocks and campfires, producing small bits of workable metal. Sumerian craftspeople gradually developed specialized furnaces that could reach higher temperatures, using clay tubes called tuyères to direct airflow and boost the heat. By the late Uruk period, they had mastered casting molten metal in ceramic molds, allowing for the mass production of identical items. Archaeological digs have uncovered workshops filled with crucibles, molds, and slag deposits, showcasing the industrial-scale metal production that fueled urban growth. These technological advances created a need for specialized craftspeople. Unlike their village ancestors who juggled multiple tasks, urban specialists dedicated their lives to mastering specific crafts, achieving levels of skill and innovation that were previously unheard of. All of this progress was supported by revolutionary administrative structures. At the center of Mesopotamian society was the temple complex, not just a place of worship, but the backbone of economic life, with the impressive Ina precinct housing shrines, storehouses, workshops, and administrative spaces to manage the city's resources. Temple economies worked on a pretty straightforward idea. They redistributed resources. Surpluses from agriculture flowed into temple storehouses as offerings to the gods, and then those goods were shared out to support priests, craftspeople, and laborers who kept the city running smoothly. Early clay tablets show just how careful they were with their records keeping track of grain distributions, rations, and labor assignments that made sure the urban machine kept chugging along. Managing all these resources came with its challenges, which led to some clever innovations in accounting. Temple officials set up standardized ration systems with specific amounts based on age, gender, and job. Archaeologists have found thousands of clay tokens in all sorts of shapes: cones, spheres, discs that were used to keep tabs on different commodities before being sealed in clay envelopes for permanent records. These tokens eventually evolved into numerical notation on clay tablets, making bookkeeping way more sophisticated. Administrators got creative with complex systems for recording debits and credits, figuring out interest on loans, and predicting agricultural yields. These were the math innovations that laid the groundwork for future economic development. Creating and maintaining these records also led to the rise of a new and influential social class, the scribes. Young men, and sometimes women, went through years of tough training to master the intricate writing system, memorizing hundreds of signs and learning to work with clay tablets like pros. Their education set them apart from everyone else, giving them special roles in temple and palace administrations. The scribal class would be a key part of Mesopotamian civilization for about 3,000 years. During this time, we also saw clear social stratification emerging. Archaeological evidence shows growing differences in housing, burial practices, and personal belongings. Administrative texts mention various titles and jobs like priests, overseers, merchants, craftspeople, and laborers, indicating a complex social hierarchy. Unlike the more equal village life, Urban society created chances for advancement, but also opened the door to exploitation. One of the biggest shifts was the first signs of institutional inequality. Some tablets mention people labeled as slaves or servants, although their exact status is still up for debate. Certain texts suggest that temples and later palace establishments controlled unfree labor, especially for farming and construction work. This institutionalized inequality was a dark side to the impressive achievements of early Mesopotamian civilization. As the fourth millennium came to a close, the Sumerian experiment in urban living had proven to be a huge success. The innovations that started in southern Mesopotamia spread throughout the region and beyond, setting the stage for the next big chapter, the rise of competing city-states that would shape the early dynastic period. The early dynastic period, c. 2900 to 2350 BC, as the third millennium BC rolled in, Mesopotamia kicked off a new chapter in its history. The earlier times of urban growth shifted into a scene of intense political fragmentation. The fertile land between the rivers became a battleground for various competing city-states, each one built around a major settlement and its surrounding farms. These independent hubs like Ur, Kish, Lagash, Umma, and Nippur operated as their own little kingdoms, each with its own rulers, gods, and territorial goals. Every city was well defended, boasting massive walls to keep out any threats. In the heart of these cities, you'd find important administrative buildings, grand temples, and impressive palaces, while the residential areas spread out in tight-knit clusters. Canals crisscrossed the urban landscape, providing water for daily life and acting as vital routes for transporting goods. The architectural skill on display was a testament to generations of knowledge and experience in building. Take the city of Ur, for example. Excavated by Leonard Woolley in the 1920s and 1930s, it really stands out as a prime example of these early dynastic centers. The city was surrounded by a double-wall system that covered nearly 60 hectares, with the outer wall stretching over 4 kilometers. The impressive ziggurat, though mostly rebuilt later, rested on foundations from the early dynastic period. Inside, you'd find tightly packed housing along narrow streets that were too small for wheeled vehicles. At the center of the city lay the Royal Cemetery, where archaeologists uncovered remarkable evidence of elite wealth and ritual practices, including the infamous death pits that held sacrificed retainers who accompanied royal burials. Kish, located in northern Babylonia, held a special status as the city that received kingship from the heavens after the legendary flood. Archaeological digs revealed significant public buildings, including a palace known as the Plano-Convex Building, due to its unique brick design. The Sumerian king list highlights Kish as the site of the first dynasty after the flood, showcasing its importance in early dynastic political thought. Lagash emerged as a key political player, even with its smaller size. This city-state managed a rich agricultural area through a network of 3 major settlements, Lagash, Gersu, and Nina. The remarkable collection of royal inscriptions from Lagash offers incredible insights into early dynastic political beliefs, military conflicts, and administrative practices. These texts detail boundary disputes with neighboring Umma that led to generations of warfare, making it the most documented conflict of this time. During this period, leadership underwent a significant transformation. Earlier communities were mainly run by temple authorities, priests who acted as go-betweens for humans and deities. Now, military leaders known as Lugals, great men, took the reins. They initially rose to power during conflicts with nearby communities and later, established their control through hereditary dynasties. These rulers claimed their authority came from divine sanction, with royal inscriptions declaring their selection by patron deities to govern as earthly representatives. Grand coronation rituals further solidified this religious basis for leadership. Kings built monumental structures, especially temples and palaces, to showcase their elevated status. These buildings were crafted by skilled artisans using expensive materials and innovative techniques, designed to inspire awe among their subjects and visitors alike. Despite the claims of divine appointment, royal authority was always up for debate. Noble families had a big say in things, often through councils that kept a check on the king's power. Local shrines enjoyed some independence from the central government, adding to the mix. This push and pull between centralized rule and traditional authority created lively political scenes in each community. With so many independent city-states popping up, conflicts were pretty much inevitable. Artifacts from this time give us an amazing look at military encounters. Take the Standard of Ur, for instance. This wooden box, beautifully decorated with inlaid shell and lapis lazuli, shows military parades, chariot battles, and the capture of prisoners. These detailed scenes show us that military units were organized and equipped with standard gear, using tactical formations. This incredible artifact, found in a royal tomb at Ur, is about 20 by 45 centimeters in size. Its two long sides show contrasting scenes of war and peace, with intricate inlays of shell, red limestone, and lapis lazuli against a dark backdrop. The war side depicts battle chariots running over enemies, infantry wielding spears and axes, and naked captives being presented to a larger figure, likely the king. On the peace side, there's a royal feast with attendants bringing in animals, fish, and other goodies while musicians play. These vibrant images give us a priceless glimpse into the military organization of the early dynastic period, showing the connections between warfare and royal power. No artifact captures the harsh reality of early warfare quite like the stele of vultures. This limestone monument, ordered by Enadim of Lagash around 2450 BC, celebrates a victory over Umma. One side shows the ruler leading a group of soldiers with spears and heavy shields, trampling fallen foes. The other side features vultures carrying away the severed heads of the defeated, an intense image that gives the stele its modern name. The stele also lays out the specific territorial disputes between Lagash and Umma over a fertile area called Gwe-Dena. Inscriptions on the stele talk about divine intervention, with Lagash's patron deity Ningjur-Su appearing to Enadim in a dream and promising victory. After taking down Umma's forces, Enadim imposed strict terms, including tribute payments and the building of memorial mounds over the mass graves of the defeated. This monument is a mix of historical record, religious justification, and political propaganda, all hallmarks of Mesopotamian commemorative art. These conflicts sparked a wave of military innovation. Archaeological finds show that weaponry became more sophisticated. Copper alloy spearheads replaced earlier stone tips, and helmets and body armor gave elite troops better protection. Composite bows also came into play, extending the range of projectiles. Military specialists emerged as a new social class, getting land or rations in return for their service to the rulers. Excavations throughout Mesopotamia have uncovered specialized military gear that reflects this growing sophistication. The helmet from Ur is a prime example of copper armor for elite soldiers. Mace heads evolved from simple stone spheres to intricately carved symbols of authority. Standardized spearheads and arrowheads show that military equipment was mass-produced. The most significant development was the composite bow, made from wood, horn, and sinew layered together, which dramatically increased range and power compared to simple wooden bows. This weapon would remain the top choice for projectiles in warfare until gunpowder came along. Most conflicts revolved around agricultural land and water rights. The Stele of Vultures specifically mentions disputes over boundary territories along irrigation canals. These vital resources justified bloodshed in a world where agricultural productivity was key to economic and political survival. Winning a conflict meant not just gaining territory, but also boosting the prestige of the victorious monarch. The economic effects of warfare went beyond just conquering lands. Captives taken in battles were often used as labor for construction projects and farming. Tribute collected from conquered territories filled royal treasuries with valuable materials and luxury items. These resources funded more military campaigns, creating a cycle of competition that defined relationships between cities. Even with all this competition, the early dynastic period was a time of remarkable cultural achievements. Archaeological digs give us a peek into daily life during this vibrant era. Residential areas featured homes that ranged from simple, single-room houses to more complex, multi-room compounds with internal courtyards. Most families lived in mud brick structures topped with reed roofs, cooking over central hearths and sleeping on reed mats. The diet back then was pretty simple but hearty, mainly consisting of barley bread, along with pulses, veggies, fish, and every now and then a bit of meat. Beer, brewed from barley, wasn't just a drink. It was a staple part of their culture, enjoyed at social gatherings and during religious ceremonies. Pottery vessels of all shapes and sizes made it easy to prepare, store, and enjoy their meals. When we dig into the archaeological finds, we get a clearer picture of what ancient Mesopotamians were munching on. Barley was the star of the show, transformed into bread and porridge. Sweet treats like dates, apples, and pomegranates added a little zing, while garlic, onions, and leeks brought in the flavor. Animal bones tell us that they ate sheep, goats, pigs, and fish, but meat was usually saved for special occasions or the tables of the elite. Dairy products, especially butter and various cheeses, were also important, providing those essential fats and proteins. Beer came in all sorts of varieties, from the low-alcohol brews enjoyed daily to stronger ones saved for festivals and ceremonies. And let's not forget about leisure time. The royal game of yore, found in the tombs of the elite, highlights just how much board games meant to Mesopotamian society. This two-player race game involved dice and beautifully crafted playing boards inlaid with shell, lapis lazuli, and red limestone. These games were more than just fun. They were a way for people to socialize and show off their strategic skills. Speaking of the royal game of yore, it dates back to around 2500 BC and featured a wooden board with 20 squares arranged in 3 rows. Players would move their pieces based on the rolls of tetrahedral dice, racing to get their 7 pieces off the board. Some squares offered protection or required extra rolls. The complete rules, pieced together from a later Babylonian tablet, show that this game was a clever mix of luck and strategy. Similar game boards have been discovered all over the Near East, showing just how popular this pastime was across different social classes and cultures. Now, let's talk about women during this time. They had some complex roles in society. While it was a patriarchal world, legal tablets show that women could own property, run businesses, and even hold certain religious positions. Some women owned textile workshops, which hints at a level of economic independence. The women from royal and noble families had the most power, often using their family connections to influence decisions. Cuneiform records shed light on the legal rights women held in early dynastic society. Marriage contracts laid out the responsibilities of both spouses and the conditions for divorce. Women could inherit property, including land and slaves, and manage these assets on their own. Many breweries were run by women, providing them with significant economic opportunities. Administrative texts even mention female scribes, indicating that some elite women had access to specialized education. Women also served as priestesses in temples dedicated to female deities. While there was definitely gender inequality, women had more legal and economic rights than in many later societies. Mathematics also saw some exciting developments during this era. The sexagesimal system, based on the number 60, emerged as a practical tool for trade and administration. This clever system allowed for precise calculations of areas, volumes, and weights. Clay tablets show that they were solving complex problems, including square and cube roots, and even early algebraic methods for tackling equations. The sexagesimal system, which started back in the Uruk period, really hit its stride during the early dynastic era. This base 60 number system gave folks some serious flexibility in calculations. And guess what? We still see its legacy today in how we measure timed 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour, as well as in angles, like a 360 circle. It's pretty amazing how Sumerian math has stuck with us. Cuneiform writing also matured during this time, transforming from simple pictographs into a complex script with hundreds of wedge-shaped signs. Initially, it was mostly for keeping track of administrative and economic stuff, but soon scribes were writing all sorts of things: literary texts, religious hymns, and royal inscriptions. Learning this intricate writing took years of training, leading to the rise of a specialized class of scribes who were key in preserving and sharing cultural knowledge. Archaeological digs have uncovered scribal schools, known as edubas or tablet houses, where students learned the ropes. They started by shaping clay tablets and using writing tools, then moved on to copying sign lists and tackling bilingual Sumerian-Akkadian dictionaries. As they advanced, they dived into legal terms, math, and creative writing. The training was strict, with punishments for mistakes. This standardized approach helped pass down cultural knowledge and built strong connections among the educated elite who ran things in Mesopotamia. These achievements, all born from a backdrop of political strife and constant warfare, showcase the incredible creativity of early dynastic society. The competition among the independent cities pushed everyone to innovate, making them strive for greatness in architecture, art, and intellect. The people of ancient Mesopotamia saw their world as filled with divine presence. Everything from natural events to social structures and human actions was part of a cosmic order set by supernatural powers. This view came to life through a rich pantheon of gods who influenced every part of daily life. At the top of this divine hierarchy were four main deities, and the sky god symbolized ultimate authority, but was a bit distant from human affairs. Enlil, the lord of wind and storms, acted as the active enforcer of divine will, making decisions that shaped the fate of the cosmos. Enki, the god of fresh water, represented wisdom and cleverness, often stepping in to assist humanity during tough times. Inanna, the Queen of Heaven, ruled over love, fertility, and war, embodying the wild forces of creation and destruction. Below these supreme beings, there were hundreds of lesser gods overseeing specific areas. Nanna for the moon, Utu for the sun, Ninhursag for the earth, Ninurta for agriculture, Jibal for fire, and many more. Each aspect of reality had its divine overseer, creating a lively universe where natural events reflected supernatural intentions. The Sumerians believed that the gods had set up a fundamental cosmic principle called Mi, pronounced May. These divine powers structured both the natural world and social life, defining how everything worked. When the Mi was respected, it ensured harmony between human society and the cosmic order. The creation myth Enuma Elish, although preserved in later Akkadian versions, has roots in Sumerian cosmology. It talks about primordial waters that existed before heaven and earth split apart. From these waters, divine generations emerged, with younger gods eventually overcoming older, chaotic forces. The victorious god Marduk, who sometimes replaced Enlil, created the physical world from the body of the defeated Tiamat, establishing cosmic order through divine conflict. This story set up a universe shaped by divine will and power struggles, where stability needed constant upkeep through proper religious practices. Creation myths also explained humanity's role in this divine plan. One story says humans were made from clay mixed with the blood of a slain god, creating beings with both divine and earthly qualities. Another version suggests humans were created to take on the god's workload, acting as a divine workforce to maintain temples, offer sacrifices, and perform rituals necessary to keep cosmic order. The myth of Atrahasis tells how humanity was created to solve divine labor issues. Lower-ranking gods had rebelled against their tasks of digging irrigation canals and maintaining the cosmic system. To address this, Enki and the mother goddess Nintu created humans from clay, mixed with the blood of a sacrificed god, forming beings to do the necessary work in divine service. This narrative set humanity's main purpose: to maintain divine service through worship and productive work. Later, when humans multiplied and became too noisy, the gods sent disasters to reduce their numbers, establishing mortality as a check on the human population. These myths framed humanity's essential purpose: to serve the gods through proper worship and adherence to divine rules. This relationship wasn't seen as exploitation, but as a necessary cosmic partnership. By fulfilling their roles, humans ensured continued divine favor, which showed up as agricultural abundance, political stability, and protection from disasters. The temple was the heart of Mesopotamian religious life. Every major settlement had grand sacred complexes dedicated to local gods. These buildings evolved from simple shrines to elaborate multi-room structures, culminating in the massive stepped platforms that would later become classic ziggurats. These sacred spaces acted as divine homes where gods lived among their human followers. Daily rituals included washing and dressing divine statues, presenting food offerings, and performing elaborate purification ceremonies. Professional priests and priestesses kept constant ritual activity going, ensuring the divine presence remained strong within the community. The daily ritual cycle kicked off before dawn when priests opened temple doors with purification ceremonies. Morning offerings included bread, meat, beer, and incense, presented to the deity's statue, which was seen not just as a symbol, but as the god's physical presence on earth. Midday brought another meal service, while afternoons were spent managing temple resources. Evening rituals wrapped up the day with more offerings, hymns, and prayers before sealing the sanctuary for the night. This ongoing cycle of divine service maintained cosmic order while distributing agricultural surpluses through the temple's economic system. Temple architecture mirrored the cosmic hierarchy. The innermost sanctuary held the divine image, accessible only to high-ranking religious personnel. Outer courtyards allowed broader participation in public ceremonies. The elevation of temples on platforms or artificial mounds symbolized the space between earth and heaven, enhancing communication between human and divine realms. Beyond these official institutions, personal religious experiences flourished at the household level. Archaeological digs have uncovered small shrines in private homes, with figurines representing protective deities or ancestors. Families conducted rituals at home to ensure divine protection for their households. Personal gods acted as intermediaries between individuals and the greater cosmic powers, especially in times of need. Household religious practices revolved around family deities who served as personal links to the greater gods. Evidence includes small clay figurines of protective spirits and deities found beneath house floors. Families maintained household altars for daily offerings and prayers. Birth, marriage, and death involved specific domestic rituals, ensuring divine protection during these important life transitions. Household religious practices created a sense of spiritual security in the unpredictable Mesopotamian environment, where illness, flooding, or conflict could strike at any moment. Divination practices were crucial for communicating with supernatural forces. Skilled specialists interpreted natural events as divine messages. The patterns of oil droplets in water, the shapes of smoke from burning incense, or the markings on animal livers from sacrifices. These techniques helped people understand divine will and adjust their actions accordingly, keeping harmony with cosmic order. The most advanced divination method involved examining sheep livers, hepatoscopy, based on the belief that deities inscribed their messages on the organs of sacrificial animals. Diviners classified and interpreted features like bumps, colors, and the condition of the gallbladder according to systematic principles preserved in extensive technical manuals. Other methods included astrology, reading celestial movements, lecanomancy, oil patterns on water, libanomancy, smoke patterns, and oniromancy, dream interpretation. These diverse techniques provided a spiritual kit for navigating uncertain futures through divine guidance. Religious festivals marked the calendar with cycles of celebration and renewal. The New Year festival, Akichu, featured elaborate ceremonies, including ritual combat, divine marriage, and recitation of creation myths. These communal events revitalized cosmic order and reaffirmed the bond between human society and divine powers. In these sacred moments, participants felt a direct connection to the primordial events that shaped their reality. The Akichu festival, celebrated at the spring equinox, was the year's most important religious event. This 12-day ceremony included ritual cleansing of temples, a symbolic humiliation and restoration of the king, recitation of the Enuma Elish creation epic, and a sacred marriage ceremony, Hieros Gamos, between the ruler and a priestess representing Inanna. During this time, normal social boundaries blurred, with role reversals and festive elements. The festival culminated in a procession of divine statues through the city, followed by feasting and celebration. This complex ritual cycle renewed cosmic order, legitimized royal authority, and strengthened community ties through shared religious experiences. The religious worldview of ancient Mesopotamia found deep expression through literature. Professional scribes crafted sophisticated texts exploring the relationship between humanity and divine powers. These works, inscribed on clay tablets, represent some of the earliest literature in human history. The poet Enheduanna is a standout figure in this literary tradition. As the daughter of Sargon of Akkad and high priestess of the moon god Nanna, she wrote powerful hymns to the goddess Inanna around 2300 BC. Her works carry her personal touch. She's recognized as the first known author in history. With stunning emotional depth, she explored themes of divine power and human vulnerability, setting the stage for literary traditions that would inspire countless writers after her. Enheduanna's most famous piece, The Exaltation of Inanna, Misera, delves into her personal struggles during a time of political turmoil and her heartfelt plea to the goddess for help. This text blends autobiography, political insight, and religious devotion in a clever literary style. Her collection of temple hymns meticulously details 42 sacred sites across Mesopotamia, creating a rich literary map of divine presence. Enheduanna's writing showcases impressive poetic techniques like metaphor, parallelism, and repetition. Her voice, personal, passionate, and politically aware, truly marks her as a foundational figure in world literature. Another standout work from this period is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which tackles big questions about life and death. Although it took its classic form later on, the story has roots in earlier Sumerian tales about a real ruler of Uruk. The epic follows Gilgamesh's journey from a brash young king to a wise leader, culminating in his quest for immortality. This masterpiece speaks to the core of the human experience, the struggle between great achievements and the reality of death. In this tale, we meet Gilgamesh, a semi-divine king who wreaks havoc in his city until the gods create Enkidu, a wild man, to match his strength. After an epic showdown, the two become best buddies and embark on heroic adventures together. But when Enkidu dies, Gilgamesh is crushed by grief and the harsh truth of mortality. He sets off on a quest to find Utnapishtim, a flood survivor who was granted immortality by the gods. Even though he finds Utnapishtim and briefly gets his hands on a rejuvenating plant, Gilgamesh ultimately fails to achieve eternal life. He returns to Uruk, coming to terms with mortality while taking pride in his city's walls and the achievements of civilization, finding meaning in his cultural legacy instead of personal immortality. Religious poetry also played a key role in the literary scene. Temple hymns celebrated divine qualities and sacred spaces, while lamentations mourned the loss of cities and temples, viewing disasters as signs of divine neglect. Mythological tales recounted the adventures of gods, explaining natural events and social structures through these sacred stories. A prime example of Sumerian mythological literature is the myth of Inanna's descent to the underworld. This gripping story narrates the goddess's journey to her sister Ereshkigal, the queen of the dead. Inanna must pass through 7 gates, giving up a piece of her divine power at each one, until she arrives naked and powerless before her sister. After being struck dead and hung on a hook, Inanna can only return to the upper world, thanks to her clever servant Ninshuber, who secures divine help. Her return comes with a catch. She has to find a replacement in the underworld, ultimately choosing her unfaithful husband Dumuzi. This intricate tale dives into themes of divine power, cosmic boundaries, sacrifice, and renewal, using vivid imagery and deep psychological insight. These works weren't just pretty words. They were essential for keeping cosmic order. Public recitations of myths during festivals brought the stories back to life. Lamentations acted as spiritual tools to regain divine favor, while hymns activated the presence of the gods in temple rituals. Literature played a crucial role in the intricate relationship between humanity and the divine. The literary achievements of Mesopotamian civilization helped preserve religious ideas, historical events, and cultural values for future generations. These texts offer a fascinating glimpse into how ancient people viewed their world and their place in it. Through these written works, we can catch a glimpse of the intellectual and spiritual landscape of humanity's first civilization. The Akkadian Empire, c. 2334 to 2190 BC. In the midst of a vibrant mix of competing city-states, a remarkable leader emerged, ready to change the political landscape of Mesopotamia forever. This charismatic figure, who started from humble beginnings, would go on to create history's very first true empire. The fascinating story of his origins set the stage for his extraordinary accomplishments. Legend has it that this child, born into modest circumstances, was placed in a reed basket and set adrift on the Euphrates River, a tale that has echoed through time in many stories of abandoned infants destined for greatness. He was found and raised by a royal gardener, eventually rising to the position of cupbearer to the king of Kish, which gave him a unique look into the inner workings of power. Sargon's birth legend is captured in a first-person narrative. My mother was a high priestess. My father I knew not. My mother conceived me in secret. She bore me. She set me in a basket of rushes. With bitumen she sealed my lid. She cast me into the river which rose not over me. This captivating origin story laid the groundwork for his incredible rise to power, establishing a sense of divine favor. Whether it's true or just a clever tale, it made his rule seem legitimate, even though he didn't come from traditional royal lineage. This narrative created a powerful template for future leaders who sought to seize power. From this key position, the ambitious young man who took the name Sargon, meaning legitimate king, plotted a coup against his royal master. Once he gained control of Kish, he unleashed his impressive military skills on the other Sumerian city-states. One by one, the great cities fell to his well-trained forces. Even the mighty Uruk, with its towering defensive walls, couldn't hold up against his clever siege tactics. Sargon's military campaigns, celebrated in later literature and inscriptions, showcased unprecedented scale and organization. His army reportedly numbered 5,400 men who dined on bread daily before him, hinting at a professional standing army rather than a seasonal militia. This military edge gave him a crucial advantage over city-states that relied on citizen soldiers. The conquest of Uruk and the capture of its king, Lugal-Zagassi, marked a significant victory. Sargon humiliated his rival by parading him in a neck-stock to the gate of Enlil's temple at Nippur, a powerful symbol of divine favor shifting to the new ruler. Sargon's conquests quickly expanded well beyond the usual Sumerian lands. His armies marched triumphantly through the Tigris-Euphrates Valley, crossed the Syrian plateau into Anatolia, and possibly even reached the Mediterranean coast. Records hint that his influence stretched into what we now call Iran and beyond. These campaigns created a vast state that included a mix of different regions and ethnic groups. Royal inscriptions boldly declare that Sargon made tributary the lands from the Upper Sea to the Lower Sea, meaning he controlled everything from the Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf. Archaeological finds back up the Akkadian presence across northern Mesopotamia, with key administrative centers popping up in strategic spots. Trade routes opened up access to valuable materials like cedar from Lebanon, silver from Anatolia, and lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. To manage such a wide-reaching empire, Sargon had to come up with smart systems for communication and control. This included standardized weights and measures, a network of imperial roads, and provincial administrators who were loyal to the central authority. What's really impressive is how Sargon managed to turn temporary military victories into lasting imperial rule. He placed loyal followers as governors in conquered areas, and even made sure their sons were educated at his court. This created strong ties that connected distant regions back to his central authority. His approach to governance set the stage for future empires across the ancient world. To keep everything running smoothly, Sargon's new imperial system needed innovative solutions. The old ways of managing individual city-states just didn't cut it anymore for such a sprawling empire. So imperial administrators came up with standardized accounting practices and procedures to keep the economy buzzing across vast distances. Royal inspectors traveled the realm, making sure everyone followed the imperial rules. These smart administrative moves helped overcome the challenges of distance and diversity that had tripped up earlier political systems. The Akkadian achievement in standardization really shines through in the weights and measures used across their empire. They had standard weight stones with official markings, which made sure that trade was fair and followed the same rules everywhere. Royal officials also used uniform volume measures for taxes, leveling the playing field for all provinces. Plus, their distance measuring systems helped with building projects and communication across the vast territory. These smart innovations created an economic space like never before. Trade networks really took off with the empire's backing. Merchants felt secure thanks to standardized laws and protection along major routes, which was a total game changer. They connected with places like the Indus Valley, the Persian Gulf, Anatolia, and maybe even Egypt. Exotic goods like lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, cedar from Lebanon, copper from Oman, and gold from Anatolia flowed into the heart of the empire, sparking a wave of artistic and architectural achievements. You can spot the evidence of this trade boom in the unique Akkadian cylinder seals found all over the Near East and beyond. There are inscriptions that proudly declare ships from Meluha, the Indus Valley, Magan, Oman, and Dilmun, Bahrain, docked at the quays of Akkad. Plus, if you check out metal artifacts, you'll notice a significant rise in the use of tin bronze, which required tin from far-off places like Afghanistan or Central Asia. This long-distance trade not only filled the empire's coffers through customs duties, but also brought in essential materials for grand buildings and luxury items that boosted royal prestige. The empire's multilingual nature called for some smart cultural policies. The ruling elite spoke Akkadian, a Semitic language that was different from Sumerian, but they still honored the rich traditions of ancient Sumer. Scribal schools kept teaching Sumerian alongside Akkadian, and religious centers received support regardless of language. This cultural mix allowed various groups to maintain their local identities while being part of the larger imperial picture. Art during the Akkadian period reached incredible levels of naturalism and energy. Just look at the famous victory stele of Naram Sin, Sargon's grandson. It shows him climbing a mountain over fallen enemies, wearing a horned crown usually reserved for God's proof of how the empire elevated kings to almost divine status. Cylinder seals from this time showcase amazing craftsmanship, with intricate combat scenes and mythological stories. These artistic breakthroughs really captured the vibrant mix of cultures in the imperial cities, where different traditions blended and inspired fresh creative ideas. Most significantly, the empire fostered unprecedented cultural exchange between previously isolated regions. Artistic motifs, technological innovations, and religious concepts circulated across traditional boundaries. This cross-fertilization stimulated creative developments in everything from literature to metallurgy. The cosmopolitan atmosphere of imperial cities created dynamic environments where diverse traditions could interact and influence one another. Despite these achievements, the imperial structure contained inherent vulnerabilities. Maintaining control over such vast territories required constant military vigilance, draining resources from productive sectors. Provincial elites resented central authority, particularly taxation demands. Rebellions erupted periodically, requiring costly suppression campaigns. These internal tensions created ongoing challenges for imperial administration. The reign of Naram-Sin, Sargon's grandson, revealed these mounting pressures. Despite military success commemorated in triumphant monuments, inscriptions mention increasingly frequent rebellions requiring royal intervention. The Great Revolt united multiple cities against imperial authority, nearly toppling the regime before Naram-Sin reasserted control through military force. These internal conflicts consumed resources and disrupted the economic integration that had fueled imperial prosperity. Administrative texts from late in his reign show increasing demands for tribute and labor service, suggesting economic strain despite outward displays of imperial power. Archaeological evidence shows that these political stresses lined up with a huge environmental shift around 2200 BC. The region faced what scientists now call the 4.2 kiloyear event, a long stretch of severe drought lasting several decades. Sediment cores from the Persian Gulf and pollen samples from nearby lakes reveal a sharp drop in rainfall during this time. This climate disruption hit a civilization that relied on irrigation agriculture hard. Research into past climates shows that this drought spread from the Aegean to the Indus Valley, causing civilizational collapse in multiple societies at once. Deep-sea cores from the Gulf of Oman show a big spike in dust levels, indicating serious aridification. Archaeological surveys in northern Mesopotamia reveal that over 75% of sites were abandoned during this period, with people moving from dry farming areas to river valleys. Agricultural systems that worked well before just couldn't keep up with the new conditions. As the drought worsened, crop yields dropped dramatically across the empire. Canal systems ran dry and fell into disrepair. Food shortages led to population declines in major cities, and tax revenues took a hit, making it hard for the empire to maintain control and military readiness. This environmental disaster really exposed and worsened the weaknesses in the imperial system. A literary piece called The Curse of Agada captures this time of ecological and political collapse. For the first time since cities were built, the great agricultural tracts produced no grain. All the foreign lands produced no grain. The large fields and orchards produced no fruit. No new plants grew. While it includes mythological elements linking the disaster to divine punishment for Naram-Sin's actions, it reflects a cultural memory of the harsh environmental conditions that led to the empire's downfall. The combined pressures of internal rebellions, environmental issues, and crop failures created the perfect storm for outside invasions. The Deutschans, a mountain people from the northeastern Zagros region, began launching more and more successful raids into the empire. At first, they were just a nuisance, but as the empire's military strength weakened, these tribal warriors faced less resistance. Mesopotamian texts describe the Deutschans as uncivilized people who know no inhibitions and have human intelligence but canine instincts. They took full advantage of the empire's vulnerability, targeting weak settlements and disrupting already shaky communication routes. Unlike earlier threats that the imperial armies could keep at bay, these mountain fighters pushed deep into the heart of Mesopotamia. With not enough resources to manage both internal issues and protect the borders, the imperial leaders found themselves in a tough spot. By around 2190 BC, the capital fell to these mountain warriors, and the complex political structure built over generations crumbled fast. Cities that once thrived on imperial connections became isolated and exposed, leading to fragmentation and local rule as the Gushing bands took over the former heartland. The Deutsche Interregnum, c. 219-0211 OBC. The arrival of the Gutian warriors really shook things up in Mesopotamia, both politically and economically. These semi-nomadic folks from the northeastern highlands didn't have any experience with urban governance. Instead of ruling with structure, they mostly took on an extractive overlord role. A later Sumerian king list even notes that they ruled with no understanding of order, which says a lot. Mesopotamian literature didn't hold back when it came to criticizing Gutian rule. The piece Lamentation over the Destruction of Sumer and Ur paints them as dragons of the mountain, a people who know no submission, with human faces but canine instincts and monkey features. The Sumerian king list mentions 21 Gutian rulers, but adds that they governed from tents rather than proper palaces, highlighting how they were viewed as barbaric. While these accounts might be a bit exaggerated, they certainly reflect the cultural chaos that took place during this turbulent time. With all this upheaval, long-distance trade networks crumbled. Archaeological findings show a significant drop in luxury goods and a decline in regional trade. Urban centers shrank, and people moved to rural areas to dodge taxes and conscription. Big construction projects came to a standstill as resources that used to flow through imperial channels dried up. The complex connections of the imperial era gave way to more localized ways of living. The archaeological evidence from this period clearly shows urban decline. Public buildings fell into disrepair, streets got messy, and residential areas shrank as houses were left behind. Trade items like lapis lazuli from Afghanistan and exotic woods almost vanished from the record, replaced by local pottery styles, signaling a shift towards self-sufficiency. Cultural continuity really held strong, even with all the political chaos. Temple complexes kept up religious practices and protected literary traditions. Scribal schools, though smaller, still passed down knowledge gathered over the years. Local leaders adjusted to the times, creating more manageable governance models. Thanks to these tough cultural institutions, the achievements from earlier days stayed alive during this tricky period. The Temple of Inanna in Nippur stands as a key symbol of Mesopotamia's rich cultural heritage. Even amidst political turmoil, traditional ritual offerings kept flowing. Scribal work didn't skip a beat, with careful copies of classic texts being made. Religious leaders stuck to their roles, even when resources were tight. These local institutions, rooted in their communities and driven by faith, proved to be tougher than the empires that relied on military might and strict control. In several southern cities, local dynasties started to reclaim their independence from the Gutian overlords. Archaeological findings show a slow but steady rebuilding of urban areas, fixing up irrigation systems, and a boost in local crafts. From these hubs of resistance, especially the ancient religious center of Uruk, military leaders emerged, ready to kick out the foreign rulers and revive Mesopotamian culture. Their hard work led to the exciting comeback known as the Neo-Sumerian period. Utu-Hegel of Uruk led the most successful resistance against the Gutians by bringing together southern cities that were fed up with their heavy demands. His victory inscription talks about a campaign against the Gutian leader Tirigan, framing the liberation as a way to restore divine favor. The text mentions how Utu-Hegel prayed to the gods Inanna and Dumuzi, who helped him win as the divine champion of Mesopotamian civilization against the so-called barbaric mountain peoples. This idea of divine support shaped the political beliefs of the Neo-Sumerians, portraying local rulers as chosen ones to restore the right cosmic and social order. The Neo-Sumerian revival, your three dynasty, c. 2110-2004 BC, the story of Mesopotamia's liberation from Gutian control, kicks off with Utu-Hegel of Uruk, who took down the mountain peoples in a big battle. But guess what? His victory didn't last long. Soon after, power shifted to his former governor of Ur, a driven guy named Ur-Nammu. He kicked off a dynasty that would lead to an amazing cultural comeback. Ur-Nammu launched military campaigns that brought back the old imperial territories, city by city and province by province. His troops re-established central authority across Sumer and Akkad. What's interesting is that Ur-Nammu didn't just see himself as a conqueror. He framed his rule as a revival of genuine Mesopotamian tradition, tapping into shared cultural roots to legitimize his power. You can see how important this was in the royal inscriptions, which highlight Ur-Nammu's role in restoring divine favor after the Gutian chaos. One inscription proudly states that he established freedom for the peoples of Sumer and Akkad by getting rid of foreign oppressors. Another talks about how he revived international trade. The roads that had been blocked up, I cleared for traffic. I removed the tolls. Archaeological digs back this up, showing a flurry of construction activity across southern Mesopotamia, including the repair of irrigation systems and public buildings that had fallen into disrepair during the Gutian period. This whole reconstruction effort was about more than just practical needs. It was a way to establish the new dynasty's legitimacy. And no structure embodies this revival better than the grand ziggurat of Uru. This impressive stepped platform, soaring over 30 meters high, blended innovative engineering with traditional religious meaning. Made from millions of mud bricks, with an outer layer of baked bricks set in bitumen, its sheer size shouted out the renewed strength of Mesopotamian civilization. Plus, it set the standard for sacred buildings in the region for centuries. The ziggurat's construction was a huge investment of resources and manpower. It was built with around 720,000 baked bricks, each weighing about 15 kilograms, plus millions of sun-dried bricks filling the interior. They even had drainage systems to keep the structure safe from water damage, with smartly designed channels guiding rain away from the massive brick platform. 3 impressive staircases led up to the first level, and a single central staircase took you up to the temple at the top. This architectural wonder really showed off the renewed political power, economic strength, and religious legitimacy of the new dynasty. Ur-Nammu's lasting legacy is in the legal realm. His famous law code which came 3 centuries before Hammurabi's well-known version, set consistent legal standards across his kingdom. The surviving pieces tackle everything from family law to business regulations, laying out penalties that varied depending on the severity of the offense. This organized approach to justice was a big step forward in government, balancing central authority with clear legal processes. The Code of Ur-Nammu kicks off with a prologue that emphasizes the divine backing for the king's judicial power. The laws are laid out in a straightforward way. If a man does X, then Y will happen to him. The topics covered range from homicide to false testimony, agriculture, and even slavery. Unlike later Babylonian laws that often called for death or mutilation, Ur-Nammu's code mostly focused on monetary compensation for injuries. This preference for restitution over punishment shows a deep understanding of law's role in society. By implementing this code throughout the kingdom, Nammu created a level of legal consistency that made trade easier and bolstered central authority while protecting individuals from arbitrary treatment. When Ur-Nammu's son, Shulgi, took over, he kicked off an impressive 48-year reign known for effective governance and cultural growth. This king was a powerhouse, combining military strength with sharp administrative skills to create a government that was truly sophisticated. Shulgi's administration set new benchmarks for how things were run. The empire was split into administrative provinces, each overseen by officials who reported directly to the royal court. They standardized record-keeping to ensure fair taxation and resource distribution throughout the land. Royal messengers zipped along a highway system connecting major cities. Most impressively, a complex redistributive economy moved agricultural goods from productive areas to administrative centers, and then to places that needed them or specialized in certain products. The archives from the provincial capital of Umma really highlight this bureaucratic skill. Thousands of tablets meticulously recorded grain shipments, labor assignments, livestock management, and taxes. Officials categorized agricultural land by its productivity, calculated expected yields using systematic formulas, and set tax obligations accordingly. Labor crews got specific work assignments with daily quotas, while messengers traveled fixed routes on a regular schedule, carrying important communications and goods. This level of documentation shows a government operating with incredible precision across a complex economic landscape. Taxation was all about mathematical precision back then. Royal officials would assess fields using systematic formulas, figuring out expected yields and tax obligations like pros. Labor needs for public works were just as clearly defined, with straightforward specs for work units and time. This whole numbers game made governance way more efficient than anything seen before. Now, let's talk about the Bela tax system. It was the star of Neo-Sumerian administration. This rotational obligation meant each province had to support the central government for a set time each year, providing agricultural products, goods, and labor based on carefully calculated quotas. Provincial governors kept detailed records of these obligations, and royal inspectors made sure everything was above board to avoid any funny business. This system spread the economic load fairly, while ensuring the central institutions got the support they needed, no matter the agricultural ups and downs. Honestly, the level of mathematical precision and organization here was something else, way ahead of its time. On top of these practical advancements, Shulgi really sparked a renaissance in literature and scholarship. He claimed to be literate in both Sumerian and Akkadian, even writing hymns to celebrate his own achievements. Royal support helped gather and preserve older texts while also creating new works. Thanks to the standardization of the Sumerian literary canon during this time, many important pieces that could have been lost to history were saved. Royal propaganda painted Shulgi as the ultimate king, warrior, scholar, athlete, and divine link. The self-praise hymns, probably written by court poets but credited to him, highlighted his amazing feats. One hymn boasted, "I'm a skilled scribe of Nisaba, goddess of writing. I can solve tough math problems." Another claimed he ran about 160 kilometers from Dnieper to Yor and back in a single day just to officiate at religious festivals in both places. These pieces of writing helped create an image of the king as superhuman, showcasing his divine favor and promoting the cultural values of literacy, athleticism, and devotion. Education got a big boost under Shulgi too. The Eduba, or tablet house, system trained new scribes with a tough curriculum. Students started with basic sign memorization and moved on to more complex texts. Advanced training included math, legal terms, and literary writing. This educational setup was key for producing the administrative whizzes needed to keep the sophisticated bureaucracy running while also preserving cultural traditions. Archaeological finds give us a peek into scribal education, showing us exercise tablets filled with typical student work like sign lists, model contracts, multiplication tables, and literary excerpts with corrections. Excavated school buildings show us how classrooms were set up, complete with benches for students and platforms for teachers. Texts about school life hint at strict discipline, where errors or misbehavior could lead to physical punishment. This standard curriculum helped pass down cultural knowledge while also building connections among the educated elite who ran the administrative institutions across Mesopotamia. It's these educated folks who kept the Neo-Sumerian government running smoothly while also preserving literary and religious traditions. The stability and prosperity during the Neo-Sumerian period led to amazing advancements in various fields of knowledge. Medical texts from this time reveal a pretty sophisticated grasp of anatomy, disease processes, and treatment methods. Physicians were savvy enough to distinguish between supernatural and natural causes, using different strategies based on what they thought was behind the illness. They created pharmaceutical prescriptions that mixed plant, mineral, and animal substances into complex formulas tailored for specific conditions. These medical traditions laid the groundwork for healing practices that would go on to influence not just Mesopotamian medicine, but eventually Greek medicine too. You can find medical knowledge in cuneiform tablets that categorize diseases by the body parts affected and their symptoms. Treatment methods included herbal remedies with detailed preparation instructions, surgical procedures described with impressive anatomical accuracy, and rituals for dealing with supernatural causes. The tradition of diagnostic handbooks, although preserved in later copies, actually started during this time of organized knowledge. These texts show a clear understanding of symptom patterns and their significance for diagnosis. This hands-on approach to medicine, blending observation with theory, set the stage for medical practices that would last for ages. Brewing technology also saw some real refinement during this period. Archaeological evidence and written records show us that there were many beer varieties, each with its own strength, flavor, and production method. Beer wasn't just a drink. It was an important source of nutrition, a religious offering, and a key economic commodity. The standardization of brewing processes reflects a deep understanding of fermentation long before science got involved. Administrative texts list over 20 different beer types, produced in temple and palace breweries, detailing everything from barley to water ratios to fermentation times and flavoring ingredients. Brewing operations relied on specially trained workers in dedicated facilities with the right equipment. Beer served as payment for laborers, providing hydration and calories in a convenient form. Certain types of beer were even required for different religious ceremonies. This whole brewing system represented a major investment in agricultural resources, with some regions dedicating about 1/3 of their barley crop to beer production. Astronomical observation reached new levels of precision under Neo-Sumerian scholars. Systematic recording of celestial phenomena allowed recognition of cyclic patterns in lunar phases, planetary movements, and seasonal markers. These observations facilitated the development of increasingly accurate calendrical systems, coordinating lunar months with the solar year. Astronomical knowledge served both practical functions, regulating agricultural activities and religious festivals, and divinatory purposes, as celestial events were interpreted as divine communications. The lunar calendar was pretty clever, using intercalation methods to add an extra month 7 times in a 19-year cycle to keep in sync with the solar year. Astronomical diaries tracked planetary positions, eclipses, and other cool celestial events, creating a treasure trove of observational data that lasted for generations. Star catalogs grouped visible celestial bodies into constellations, many of which later influenced Greek astronomy. These organized observations laid the groundwork for mathematical astronomy, which would thrive in Babylonian and Hellenistic traditions, setting the stage for all Western astronomy that followed. During this time, there was an explosion of documented knowledge. Palace and temple archives filled up with thousands of clay tablets, covering everything from sheep breeding to celestial omens. The well-known Gishur tablets laid out standardized procedures for various crafts and administrative tasks. This careful preservation of knowledge led to reference libraries that future civilizations would rely on, ensuring Mesopotamian intellectual traditions lived on. The Royal Library at Nippur housed thousands of cuneiform tablets sorted by subject in labeled containers. Scribes put together catalog systems to make finding things easier. Court specialists created comprehensive reference works on topics like lexicography, math, and divination. This organized knowledge management helped preserve and share information across generations, despite the fragility of clay tablets. The commitment to keeping these collections safe showed just how valuable knowledge was as both a practical tool and a cultural treasure. Even everyday economic activities showed off some sophisticated thinking. Standardizing weights and measures across the empire made trade smoother and highlighted a strong grasp of math. Silver became a standard value measure, enabling complex transactions involving various goods. Contract tablets detailed the conditions for loans, partnerships, and commercial ventures, revealing a level of legal and economic savvy that influenced trade practices in the Near East. The advanced economic system thrived with integrated markets, standardized exchange ratios, and clever credit mechanisms. Merchants went on trade expeditions over long distances, often teaming up in investment partnerships with clear profit-sharing agreements. Interest-bearing loans helped with capital formation, while forward contracts managed risks in agriculture. Specialized commercial courts handled disputes according to established mercantile practices, making economic integration across regions easier and fueling the wealth that supported cultural growth. The final decline and fall of Sumer, c. 2004–1900 BC. The complex administrative system of the Neo-Sumerian state actually had the seeds of its own downfall. While the centralized bureaucracy was pretty good at pulling in resources, it put a heavy strain on farmers. The tax loads and labor demands left rural communities exposed to environmental problems. Archaeological findings show that agricultural lands were becoming saltier because of intense irrigation, which slowly reduced productivity, even with advanced farming techniques. Soil samples from southern Mesopotamia indicate a steady buildup of salt during the late 3rd millennium BC. The irrigation systems that made farming possible in this dry area ended up raising the water table, bringing dissolved minerals to the surface where evaporation made them worse. As salt levels rose beyond what barley and wheat could handle, crop yields took a hit. Farmers tried to adapt by using salt-tolerant barley varieties and letting badly affected fields rest, but these fixes were only temporary solutions to a growing issue. The environmental challenges faced by the late Sumerian civilization hinted at problems that would later trouble many agricultural societies. These internal struggles were happening at the same time as fresh external threats. The Elamites from the eastern highlands, who had long been rivals of Mesopotamian powers, ramped up their attacks on border regions. At the same time, Amorite pastoralists from Syria began moving into agricultural lands, starting off as seasonal workers, but eventually setting up permanent homes. This combination of pressures stretched military resources to their limits. Administrative records from the later years of Ibisin, the last king of the Yor, the third dynasty, show that maintaining control over the territory was becoming tougher. Governors reported they couldn't fend off Amorite attacks without reinforcements that never showed up. Communication between the capital and the outskirts became hit or miss as security worsened. Letters mentioned grain shipments being interrupted by hostile forces, which meant urban centers struggled to get enough supplies. These real-world challenges weakened the centralized economic system that had once supported Neo-Sumerian success. A final blow came in 2004 BC when Elamite forces destroyed the capital city of Ur. Cuneiform records vividly described the destruction. Temples were ruined, walls were broken, and people were taken into slavery. The Lament for Ur, a poignant poem mourning this disaster, depicts the city's protective goddess leading her shrine, like a bird fleeing its nest. This powerful text captures the emotional toll of the political collapse on a population that had linked their social order with cosmic balance. The lament paints a vivid picture of Ur's tragic fall. The city is destroyed, the people groan. In its boulevards, where the feast days were celebrated, dead bodies lie scattered. In its avenues, where dances once filled the air, they are viciously attacked. This heartfelt poem doesn't just mourn the destruction. It also sees it as a sign of divine abandonment. Nanna, the moon god, has abandoned his city, the text laments. Its people are as if they had never lived there. This shows how the Mesopotamians viewed political disasters as a reflection of cosmic chaos, believing that ritual lamentation was needed to win back divine favor. The fall of Ur marked the end of Sumerian power. Sure, many cities stuck around, often bustling with life, but they lost their status as independent powerhouses. Political control shifted north to the Amorite dynasties, which set up new capitals in Isin, Larsa, and eventually Babylon. These new rulers took on many aspects of Mesopotamian culture while adding their own unique twists, reflecting their different backgrounds. One clear sign of this change was in the language. Sumerian had been the go-to language for administration and rituals during the imperial and Neo-Sumerian times. But Akkadians started taking over in everyday conversations. By around 1800 BC, Sumerian was mostly hanging on as a scholarly and religious language, much like Latin did in medieval Europe. This shift in language mirrored broader cultural changes as Amorite people blended into Mesopotamian society, bringing fresh ideas and traditions. Evidence from personal names, letters, and legal documents shows how quickly this language transition sped up after Ur's fall. While official records still used Sumerian terms, everyday talk leaned more toward Akkadian and Amorite dialects. Bilingualism became the norm, with rulers showing comfort in multiple languages. Scribal schools adapted, teaching Sumerian as a classical language alongside everyday Akkadian, ensuring cultural preservation while meeting practical communication needs. The Amorite strategy for integrating into the political scene was pretty clever. They blended Mesopotamian royal symbols with their own tribal connections. Kings showcased themselves using traditional imagery on monuments while highlighting their patriarchal lineage in family records. They supported existing temple practices, but also brought in Western Semitic gods to the mix. This mix of cultures helped them gain legitimacy, with city folks familiar with Mesopotamian customs and tribal groups wanting to keep their Amorite roots. Thanks to this approach, the Amorite dynasties managed to bring back some political stability after the chaos that followed Ur's fall. Even with all these changes, a lot of cultural traditions stuck around. Temples kept up with ancient religious practices, and scribal schools made sure to preserve and share Sumerian literature alongside newer Akkadian works. Knowledge in math, astronomy, and medicine from earlier times was still in use. This cultural strength meant that Sumerian achievements continued to shape later Near Eastern civilizations, even after Sumerian political independence faded away. Excavations at places like Nippur show this cultural continuity in tangible ways. Even with the political shifts, temple complexes held on to traditional architectural styles and rituals. Scribal schools kept producing texts in classic formats, even as they started including more Akkadian content. Administrative and legal documents adapted Sumerian practices to fit new political realities. By mixing in Amorite elements, they created a blend that preserved Sumerian innovations while making room for new ideas, keeping the legacy of humanity's first urban civilization alive and evolving. The legacy of Sumer. The technological inventions of ancient Sumer really changed what humans could do, and their impact is still felt today. Their writing system started off for accounting, but quickly turned into a versatile tool for recording everything from star charts to poetry. This major leap in information tech spread across the Near East, inspiring new scripts, including the alphabetic systems that eventually led to most modern writing styles. Cuneiform writing influenced many scripts that followed. Akkadian and Hittite adapted it for their languages, while cultures like Elamite, Hurrian, and Narration tweaked cuneiform to fit their needs. The Proto-Sinaitic script, which popped up around 1800 BC in the turquoise mines of the Sinai Peninsula, likely took cues from Egyptian hieroglyphics, but also showed ideas from Mesopotamian writing. This was a big step toward creating alphabetic systems. Eventually, this script evolved into Phoenician, which then gave rise to Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Arabic, and nearly all modern Western and Middle Eastern writing systems. This whole evolution shows how Sumerian creativity laid the groundwork for later technologies that transformed how we communicate. The urban civilization that began in southern Mesopotamia set up patterns of human organization that spread all over the globe. Concentrating people in planned towns with specialized jobs became the standard way humans lived. The division of labor, professional crafts, and administrative structures that started in Sumerian cities became blueprints for societies everywhere. The urban model seen in cities like Uruk created lasting patterns that we still see in modern cities. Monumental civic centers surrounded by neighborhoods set clear boundaries between public and private spaces. Street networks connecting key areas to outlying zones established movement patterns that are still relevant today. Administrative buildings for record keeping, centralized storage for resource distribution, and specialized craft areas producing goods for wider markets. All these vital urban elements originated in Sumerian settlements. The idea of civic identity, where belonging to a city community mattered more than family ties, is a Sumerian innovation that reshaped human social organization worldwide. Their practical innovations really boosted what humans could do. Take the wheel, for instance. It's probably summer's most game-changing invention, completely transforming transportation and manufacturing. And those irrigation techniques? They were a lifesaver in the tough Mesopotamian landscape, helping agriculture thrive in various regions around the world. Plus, the metallurgical skills developed by Sumerian craftsmen laid the groundwork for tech advancements that would eventually lead to the modern industrial age. Now, let's talk about the plow, one of summer's most significant contributions. The early versions, pulled by oxen, made farming way more efficient by breaking up the soil much better than hand tools ever could. This innovation not only supported population growth, but also reduced the amount of labor needed, paving the way for social specialization and complex civilizations. Sumerian seed plows, which could drop seeds while making furrows, cranked up efficiency even more, completely changing agricultural production. And when it comes to math, Sumerians were ahead of their time. They took concepts meant for practical administration and turned them into abstract systems that we still use today. The sexagesimal system, based on 60, is still how we measure time and angles. Their place value notation was key for advanced calculations and appears fully developed in their math texts. These numerical breakthroughs helped create a deeper understanding of numbers across various fields, setting the stage for future mathematical advancements throughout the ancient world and beyond. Legal principles from early Sumerian codes really shaped legal traditions across the Near East and the Mediterranean. The idea of written law, made public and organized, laid the groundwork for future legal systems. You can find distinctions between different types of offenses, penalties that vary based on circumstances, and rules for how cases should be handled, all in Sumerian legal texts. These early ideas anticipated many features we see in modern law today. Take the Code of Ur-Nammu, for example. It set down important legal principles that influenced later traditions. One big idea was that laws should be accessible to everyone, not hidden away or arbitrary. This was a crucial step for establishing the rule of law. They also made a distinction between intentional and unintentional acts, which helped in figuring out a person's mental state when deciding guilt. Plus, the shift toward monetary compensation instead of physical punishment introduced ideas of proportionality that shaped later legal thinking. These concepts were further developed in the Code of Hammurabi and influenced Hebrew law, Greek legal systems, and eventually Roman law, creating a connection between Sumerian innovation and modern legal principles. Now, let's talk about the mythological themes in Sumerian literature. They really resonated through later cultures. For instance, the flood story in the Epic of Gilgamesh is similar to later biblical accounts. And those creation stories about gods shaping humans from clay? They had a huge impact on various religious traditions. Ideas about divine judgment, cosmic order, and humanity's relationship with the divine laid the groundwork for religious thought that would echo through centuries of theological reflection across many faiths. The Sumerian flood story, preserved in the Epic of Gilgamesh, shares striking similarities with later biblical tales. A flood sent by the gods wipes out humanity, except for one good guy who's told to build a boat. After the waters recede, he offers a sacrifice to the gods, who then promise not to destroy the world again. This story structure, which started in Sumerian tradition, shows up in the Noah story in the Hebrew Bible and in many other Near Eastern flood myths. Similarly, Sumerian tales about humans being made from clay resonate through Genesis, Greek mythology, Egyptian religion, and countless other traditions. These mythological patterns highlight how Sumerian religious ideas provided lasting frameworks for grappling with big questions about life and our connection to the divine. Sadly, the knowledge of this incredible civilization faded from memory for thousands of years. Classical Greek and Roman writers had bits and pieces about Babylon, but were clueless about the Sumerians who came before. Biblical mentions of Babel and Shinar didn't hint at the rich cultural achievements hidden under the Mesopotamian soil. It wasn't until the 19th century that systematic archaeological digs started to uncover this lost world. Early European explorers, like Claudius Rich, who checked out Mesopotamian ruins in 1811, created the first accurate maps and descriptions of ancient sites. Paul Emile Botta and Austin Henry Layard kicked off the first serious excavations in the 1840s, finding amazing Assyrian palaces, but missing the earlier Sumerian civilization underneath. Then, in 1877, French archaeologist Ernest de Sarzec made a breakthrough at Tello, ancient Gursu, digging up statues with inscriptions in a non-Semitic language, the first recognized Sumerian artifacts. These discoveries sparked a realization that Mesopotamian civilization had deeper roots than anyone had thought. Leonard Woolley's excavations at ancient Ur between 1922 and 1934 brought the brilliance of Sumerian achievements to light for modern audiences. His work in the Royal Cemetery uncovered jaw-dropping treasures, gold headdresses, musical instruments, intricate jewelry showing a level of technological and artistic skill that was way beyond what scholars had imagined for the 3rd millennium BC. These findings forced everyone to rethink early human technological development and artistic capabilities. Woolley's careful excavation techniques gave us amazing insights into Sumerian funeral practices. In the Royal Cemetery, there were 16 burial pits, where kings and queens were laid to rest alongside retainers, who seemingly chose to accompany their masters into the afterlife. These graves uncovered incredible artifacts, like the Standard of Ur, the stunning golden lapis lazuli, ram in a thicket, and the beautiful headdress of Queen Quabi. One of the coolest finds was a silver lyre adorned with gold and lapis, connecting us directly to Sumerian music traditions that we only knew about through old texts. These discoveries really changed how we view Sumerian artistic talent and sparked deep questions about their social customs around death and kingship. Another big deal was cracking the code of cuneiform writing, which let Sumerians express themselves through their own words again. This journey kicked off with Georg Grotefend's work on Old Persian inscriptions back in 1802, and hit a high point with Henry Rawlinson's groundbreaking translations of Babylonian texts by the mid-1800s. Over the years, Scholars digging through hundreds of thousands of recovered tablets piece together the Sumerian language, literature, and history, shining a light on the amazing achievements of this early civilization. Deciphering Sumerian was no walk in the park, since it was a language isolate, meaning it had no known relatives to help with comparisons. Edward Hinks figured out that the language had an agglutinative structure, where bits of grammar stick to word stems. Francois Lenormand nailed down key phonetic values for many signs. In 1869, Julius Oppert first coined the term Sumerian, recognizing it as the language mentioned in Akkadian texts. By the end of the century, scholars like Friedrich Delitzsch and Francois-Thoreau d'Angin had laid down a solid understanding of Sumerian grammar, allowing translations that unveiled the incredible literary and intellectual feats of this ancient culture. Today, our grasp of Sumer keeps growing thanks to ongoing archaeological digs and text studies. Digital humanities methods are giving us fresh insights into their administrative and economic systems. Scientific analysis of artifacts reveals details about technological processes that we missed before. All these efforts keep expanding our appreciation for humanity's first civilization and its lasting influence on later developments. Modern archaeological techniques have totally transformed how we understand Sumerian society. Satellite imaging helps us spot ancient water routes and settlement patterns that are hard to see from the ground. Archaeobotanical studies let us identify different crop types and farming methods by looking closely at plant remains. DNA research on human remains gives us clues about population movements and genetic ties. Environmental sampling helps recreate ancient climate conditions that shaped Sumerian growth. These scientific methods work hand in hand with traditional archaeology and text analysis, giving us a clearer picture of how environmental factors and human creativity came together to build the world's first urban civilization. From their simple farming beginnings, between two rivers to urban growth, imperial expansion, and eventual decline, the Sumerians set the stage for all future human societies. Their clever solutions to environmental and social challenges created cultural patterns that still resonate today. In both their successes and struggles, the ancient Sumerians show us the incredible potential and challenges of complex societies, a legacy that's still relevant as we face our own modern-day issues. And so, our journey into the past comes to a quiet close. If you're still awake with me, I hope this tale brought you a little peace. If you enjoyed our time together, a gentle like lets me know. And subscribing means you'll never miss the next calm adventure. If you know someone who might need a little comfort tonight, feel free to share this story with them. Thank you, truly, for being here. Until next time, I wish you the sweetest dreams.